My biggest challenge as a copywriter, as an author, as a publisher, is likely a challenge that you face as well, and I'd like to help you, or at least share with you how I approach it. I'm Justin Hitt from Ad Briefing's Copywriting Tips. I have a backlog of materials, very often materials I've written for clients that maybe have been used in one or two projects, piles of notes. As you may know, I've consolidated 23 years of writing. Actually, I do have materials that go back to 1996, but I've taken all of my articles, all of my newsletters, all of my reports, and even some significant email correspondence. And I put them all in one place. It's 22,800 documents, all in Markdown, which means it's like a plain text format, so I don't have to worry about, the right word processor or anything. It is millions and millions of words. And as I go through these materials, I find materials that maybe have been used once, or a draft that was just working out an idea or concept. I essentially have an unlimited supply of content for the newsletter, for the podcast, and I still am creating new materials. And the biggest challenge that I've had is, how do I organize these materials in such a way that it makes it useful and that it facilitates the writing process so that I deliver more deliverables. Now, that's what my desire is. What really happens is, a lot of times I'm spending formatting documents, or I'm going through and finding a document, assembling a report, and then formatting it, and then it goes right back on the shelf and doesn't get published. It's because the writing is the least important thing. Now, like I said, some of these articles and materials were written for clients one time, and I like to recycle materials, and so I got paid to write it initially, but I feel like because it's there and I own the rights to it, that I ought to get paid again. My whole do the work once, get paid many times. Now, the factors that you want to be mindful of in this is that these materials represent past efforts. So in the majority of people's brains, it's going to be, how do we reuse them? But you as an individual have changed. So what's more valuable than having a giant library of materials is actually having an audience to share it with. So hear me out. For every assignment that I've done for a particular audience, I have the potential to do another assignment for the same audience, either the same client or a new client. Some of my clients I've worked with in the past, they're still in business, but they're a lot different business than they were when I worked with them. So I really don't want to work with them again. Maybe they're, they got like a bunch of corporate offices and they're doing image advertising, and I do direct response. But whatever your situation is, the audience is the most important thing. So what I've found very useful, now that I've consolidated all of my documents, and I can help you do that, I can show you some tools that I'm using in order to organize all my writing in one place, is I'm actually going as far as to use machine learning and artificial intelligence to find audiences who would benefit from these materials, and then focus effort on lead generation rather than the production of articles, podcasts, and reports. Now, I'm going to generate leads and then offer these reports as in the manuscript format. That's one of the things I've done for a long time. I have offered my reports and materials in what's called a manuscript format. It's a giant PDF file with with like drafts, almost outlines, and then I use the feedback from the end user to improve the report. So I recently published Establish Instant Credibility, and the book Establishing Instant Credibility was built from like 10 years of just correspondence and consulting assignments and other work. So the report, it was a report, now it's a book, it wrote itself, but I got paid to write it because I had an audience to write for. So there's a compulsion in many folks that I've seen who are into the copywriting business, and this compulsion makes it easier to write. You're less likely to face, and you can write a lot of materials, but the problem is writing the materials for nobody is just it's not really even an exercise, because you don't have the critical view of a third party to challenge your writing, so you'll tend to write just okay writing, and it ends up being a volume of words rather than results or something useful on a page. So I'm going to give you real quick 3 steps. Number 1 is collect all your materials in one place. It's very informative to have a library of your past writing, to have an organized way of approaching research, and to have kind of all this in a vault. Number 2, Focus on lead generation. The audience is more important than your writing. I know it feels like your writing's important because you put all this effort into it, but ultimately the audience is the most important thing. Find an audience to generate leads so that you can either write for that audience or you can sell a product or service to the audience. And number 3, it's more important to create deliverables for an audience, actually to make sales offers to that audience, than it is for you to have finished published materials. You can be the author of 50 books and it wouldn't mean anything if nobody ever buys the books. So again, you're going to research an audience, you're going to generate leads in that audience to test your assumptions about that audience, and then finally you're going to create materials for that audience. And that might mean smaller reports rather than a large book. It might mean developing a service and using the information as a means of closing the deal when it comes to that service. Or it might even mean writing or recycling your materials as a ghostwriter for somebody else. So as a copywriter, it's great to get all your materials together. It feels like you got something, but without paying clients, you're really just not doing anything. It's just not valuable. So when you get paying clients, they're going to help you with direction. They're going to help you with focus. And then ultimately, you'll have an audience for your works, and that audience will give you feedback that helps you better develop your materials. You will end up with an unlimited supply of draft materials, and you'll never get through it all, and that's okay, because the audience that you've connected with, the clients that you have, that service area will build a business. I'm Justin Hitt with Ad Briefing's Copywriting Tips. If you have any questions, visit www.adbriefings.co.uk. Simply go to the contact page, ask your questions, and I'd love to include a response in one of the podcasts. I'd also love to hear about your success stories, and then the website has a bunch of other resources. Thanks for being a part of the podcast today. Be sure to like and subscribe, and I'll see you in the next episode.